This is Metabolic Mastery, a Core Medical Technologies podcast dedicated to advancing knowledge and practice in metabolic testing. Welcome to Metabolic Mastery, brought to you by Core Medical Technologies. I'm Dr. Mark Humber, and this is my co-host, Dr. Cameron Garber. And today we've got with us Dr. Carol Ireton-Jones. She is a registered dietitian with master's and PhD in nutrition. She's also the developer of the Ireton-Jones formulas, equations. And then she also has experience in critical care, acute care, and for the last many years in outpatient care. And so we're excited to have you with us. Thanks so much for joining us today.
I am happy to be here.
Well, to start out, we just always like to kind of hear, how did you get into what you're doing? What did you find interesting? Like, how did you get to be kind of where you are today doing what you're doing?
Well, that is a kind of a long story, but just to make it kind of fun, in high school, I know, going way back, but I thought I would be an artist. Oh my gosh, I loved art. I took art 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. I took ceramics, handicrafts. I took everything. And about the last semester of my high school year, my art teacher pulled me aside and said, "Any other ideas for you? 'Cause maybe art isn't your thing." So the great news is I liked nutrition too. So I went to Texas Tech and became a registered dietitian, but I can paint anytime I want and draw and stuff. So art is still a part of my life. But I think my art teacher was right. Nutrition was the place for me. So, we were not required to have a master's when I finished my training and went to work at the hospital, but I went ahead and enrolled to get my master's. And I went to the most amazing hospital to work, Parkland Hospital. And it's the county hospital, still is, and in Dallas, Texas. And we saw everything, every kind of malnutrition you can imagine, every kind of complex surgical operation you can imagine. It was associated, still is associated with UT Southwestern Medical Center. And after I'd been there about a year, the burn unit dietitian left and I took that over. And I think that is what sort of sent me on this trajectory of really a deep dive in nutrition. And I'll tell you, I used to have to calculate how many calories the patients needed. And so we used this formula that just paid attention to the patient's weight and their percent burn. That's it. Not male, female, age, nothing else was in that equation. And so I would recommend 6,000-7,000 calories a day, maybe more. And of course I could never get that into the patient. It just wasn't possible. We used parenteral nutrition, we used enteral, we used everything. So I talked to the boss, Dr. Charles Baxter, and I said, I can't do this, but they're surviving and they're going home. How is this happening? And he said, you ought to measure their metabolic rate using indirect calorimetry. Go talk to the guy on the 9th floor. And so that was my master's thesis, was figuring out using indirect calorimetry to figure out how many calories burn patients really needed. But I don't know if you guys have worked with indirect calorimetry in the olden days with Douglas bags. Did anybody?
Did not have that luxury.
Did not. I started a little bit after that, where we had kind of the full cart. So without having to do the Douglas bag, I kind of came in the when the mixing chamber became real popular. So
lucky. I would take my big balloon over to the burn unit. The person would breathe into it. I'd close it up. Then I'd run as quickly as I could over to the lab and analyze it using their T-SOS spirometer and all that stuff that is actually gone from my brain now. So, it was a very successful study. We found out we were actually recommending too many calories for the patients, and we were able to buy a metabolic cart after that. And so then I ran that for many years. And that's where the Ireton-Jones equation came from, because I finished my master's and my PhD professor kept trying to get me to come back to school, and I was no, but he finally talked me into it, and I had this great idea for a study. I could measure metabolic rate in all these different patients. And I mean, if Harrison Benedict could do it in 1900, I could do it in 1985. So we did. And we made up these equations, which we thought they were done at Parkland. So we thought they would be the Parkland equations, but it turns out that I was the first author and somebody started calling them that, and I'm not sad.
Like, we'll take that. It'll be okay.
Yeah, that's great. Well, that's a cool thing to be known for is, the Ireton-Jones equation. So what a neat legacy, from all your hard work and study and all of those things. So that's really neat.
Yeah.
And my husband gets half of it because, he's the Jones. So it was
There you
a
go.
Ireton equation, but somewhere in the middle there, I got married. And so now it's Ireton-Jones.
So he still gets some credit.
There you go.
He does,
Hey, do
he
you
does.
know, Ireton-Jones.
Right.
So what did you find out with that? Like where you said before, you were kind of recommending 7,000 calories for those, individuals in the burn unit. What did you find out kind of was more what people needed and could actually take in?
Of a lot less. I think it was around 2,800 to 3,000 calories at the max. And the Parkland burn unit still sees the most critical patients. So we were way overestimating, and therefore would have been at risk for overfeeding. But as I said, that was kind of a big part of my job, was to calculate the deficit every day. And it was just so depressing to be a deficit every day. But when we were able to develop, and I did develop an equation out of that we used for a little while. But it just really helped us to know that we were right, that they didn't need as many calories as we thought. One very key point is the burn unit had a rehab component as well. So I got to see these people come back. We would send them home and they weren't completely healed or back to normal, but over time they would, and we'd see that their nutritional parameters came back. They gained their lean body mass back. They healed their wounds beautifully. So we knew that was too many calories, and then when we decreased it, we knew we were on target. So that was a really lucky thing to have such a complete experience there.
Yeah. Well, and I thought it was cool that you had that experience of like, okay, I'm not even able to feed them this many calories. They're getting better. Make this make sense, right? The math isn't mathing. How do we figure this out? And so I love that that's like, hey, this leads to my master's project. This eventually leads into my PhD. Like, what a cool way to explore and find out the answer to your questions.
Would say that I had the best mentors. One was Charlie Baxter, the burn unit doctor, who was all about giving you a challenge and then saying, go do it. The second was my professor at TW, who was my major professor in my master's and my PhD. For my master's, he was very interested in cardiovascular disease, and I had to win him over. That's Dr. George Liapa. And then my overall mentor, we're still friends today, was Dr. William Turner Jr., Bill Turner, who ran our nutrition support team, and just an amazing guy, amazing surgeon, and very supportive, but also challenging. You know, he wouldn't let me just go. I think that was what was on that piece of paper. We had to go get the paper, make sure everything was right. You guys understand. You've got your PhDs. You know, you'd like to maybe cut a corner. Not an option.
Okay. Oh. Yeah, being challenged is super important in your growth, I think. I love that. Yeah.
That's true. But I have to make one correction. We are not quite as smart as you, Carol. We've got our clinical doctorates, so we did not put in all the hard work to get our PhDs like you.
Right.
Okay. So you have a little bit of your psychological milieu still intact. That is
there you
PhD.
go. Right. Teensy bit.
It is just
well, in my generation of the DPT, the Doctor of Physical Therapy, we had to do like a whole doctoral dissertation and a project and like defend our project and everything. This guy, because of, well, no, it wasn't even COVID. What was it?
No,
I don't know.
So I'm pretty sure
they went away from it for some reason. So
I'm
they
pretty
didn't even
sure
have
it
to
was
do it.
because it was taking so much time out of their schedules. They were
Professors.
like, the professors, they're like, do we really need to do this? I remember I can't remember who I was talking to, if it was maybe Scott. And anyway, yeah. So by the time I came around, we didn't do that.
They've done the same thing with masters. My masters, I had to have a thesis and the whole defend and everything. And now it's like, do you want to do that? You don't really want to do that, do you? So, some people do and some people don't. And, you know, it all depends on what you as a student need. I was so lucky to have such a great place to work and such great mentors. So.
Well, it's interesting though, how often when doing that doctoral defense, that becomes the thing you become known for. In researching that project, you do so much research, and several of our professors, that's how they became expert in the thing that they were teaching in school, was actually when they were back in school and had to defend their doctoral thesis or whatever.
Right.
That's the thing they became so expert in that now they're known and become renowned for that thing. And so I think it's an important part of the process, but I don't know.
Well, I will tell you, this is what I tell. I now have the opportunity to help some PhD students with their studies. And I always tell them, do you love what you are looking into to study? Do you love it? You love it more than anything, because you're going to hate it in about 2 years. But
you better be passionate about it.
Exactly. That's why I could not do the cardiovascular thing. He had a great study in mind, and I said, but I work in the burn unit and I've got this question. And so you really do have to love it, because it becomes such a big part of your life, I think.
Oh yeah, no, absolutely. I like that. It's like, you better have such a reserve capacity of love for this. As it's getting winnowed down when you're doing this, you can still come through loving it then.
Right.
That's exactly.
Exactly.
And I love what you said about mentors too. I think it's hard to find that balance between like empathy and accountability, and so that's amazing that you had that experience. So yes. I'm interested, how did your experience in the burn unit, that early experience, kind of inform your practice throughout your career, and kind of what you did or did it?
Right. I think what I have learned from that is that you need to go back and find out whatever somebody said or whatever is the accepted, where'd that come from? Burn patients need 6 or 7 or 8,000 calories a day. Where'd that come from? And so you have to go back to the data. Whatever they said, find out who they are and where they said that. And that kind of leads a little bit to, I work in GI nutrition now, and I know you're going to ask me about that at some point, but there's a lot of GI stuff out there that is a little I'm trying to think of the right word. It's a little fringe, shall we say. So
Yeah.
we need to really find out where something comes from. Where is there true data behind that? Or did somebody say, I tried it with 5 people and it worked great, and I think this would work for you? And I think is what I learned in my experience with those 3 mentors. They just didn't let you get away with saying, oh, I think we should do this because they did that. And it's like, no, show me the data. And sometimes there's emerging data. So I know there's new data out there, but we really do need to make sure that we look for data and find what we can. So that's what I think, really.
I 100% agree with that. I'm not a very big fan of like, well, that's just the way we've always done it.
Right. Oh my gosh.
But why?
But why? Yeah. Why is that the way? I mean, that may be the worst possible way to do it, but we've just always done it that way. Like, let's look into why we're doing it that way and see if that really is the way we should be doing things.
Yes. Yep.
I think it inspires so much research and so much, as you dive into, is this really why we should be doing it? You talk about there's a lot of fringe things out there. I feel like social media has made that explode, especially in the GI space, especially. Right. We see that so much with, sensitivities and other things where everybody has gluten intolerance and all of these other things, which may be true. Maybe the way we're refining flour or other things has made a larger problem of those things, but we don't really know. And people make pretty bold claims about those types of things.
Yeah.
About 1% of the population has celiac disease, which means they need to avoid gluten completely. So there you have it.
There you go.
Right.
Yeah. Well, it's just fascinating how, 1% is what we can verify in the research, and yet the claims seem to be much, much higher than that, right?
And now, I don't know how it is in your world, but in my world, everybody eats. Not everybody, but most everybody eats. And I always give this example, and I'm sorry to the beet world out there, but if somebody said, are beets good for you? I'd say no, because I hate them. But
I'm with you 100%.
I love beets.
No.
Great about a beet. But that's not true. That is my personal opinion that beets are not great. So that's kind of how things get started. Somebody may listen to this and say, oh, I heard the part where beets aren't good for you. They're not good for me or you. But they're fine for you.
But they're great for me. I love them.
I mean, people who love beets they just get so mad at me. So
they literally make sugar out of beets. They're delicious.
Yeah, it takes a lot of beets, clearly.
That's awesome.
Okay, beets with goat cheese and some a lovely dressing where you don't taste the beets, I'll take them. But
you could just put dirt in there and add the same things and it would taste the same.
That you've hit the nail on the head. But that's it. I mean, everybody eats, so everybody has some nutrition knowledge, right? Because they are eating. They do know what foods work for them. And if you feel like you feel bloated and terrible after you eat a piece of bread, let's see what other nutrients we can get you from foods that aren't bread. So that's the bottom line is we just want to make sure nobody limits a food category and then limits all these nutrients that they'd be missing.
Yeah. Well, I think this goes back to good data. I've heard it said, there's data that I'm willing to bet my leg on, and there's data I'm not willing to bet my pinky on. and of like what actually entails good research, what does the consensus of research say. And I think this misunderstanding that like the plural of an anecdote is not data, it's anecdotes, right? And I think as we understand the hierarchy of evidence, it can really help us to vet a lot of the things that are out there. We actually did a couple of podcasts on this, applying research to an N of one, right? Like, how do we kind of sift through a lot of the stuff out there and say like, okay, here's the actual signal, here's the noise. And I think there are so many things to your point of it's like, oh, it worked for me, and so this is the principle. It's like, no, that's not the principle. That's actually the application of the deeper principle. And in your specific case, this worked for you, but for someone else, it may not be ideal. And so being able to take like, here's what the evidence says, like, here's good science, and now you're that N of one. Let's test it out, right? These foods seem to make you sensitive or bother you. Like, let's find others. There's nutrients in every type of food. And so like, what combination of foods is going to help you get the things that you need while also, avoiding things that maybe cause a reaction or that you just don't like, right? You don't like beets. You don't like this or that. Like, yeah.
Yep,
so
exactly. I mean, and I will say that is why registered dietitians are so important, because it takes some skill to understand that and to put that into place and to understand what different nutrients do and such. So I don't really love, and in fact, I don't really do menu plans anymore. Sorry, people. Just call on Claude AI and he'll rate you a great menu plan. And then I'll review it and tell you if it's right. But understanding those complexes, understanding, well, why is this bloating happening? Or I don't meeting I'm just gaining weight. And then you measure somebody's metabolic rate and you're like, well, it's probably because you are overestimating or underestimating what you're eating. There is science to help us every step of the way.
Yeah, I definitely talk about that a lot with patients, about the art versus the science. So the science of, I can measure your metabolism and know, this is how many calories you're burning at rest. And so this is the calorie range that we want you to eat in. I can dial in that science. The art of that is then saying, but what do you like to eat? When do you like to eat? How do you like to eat? How, applying that to their actual life and lifestyle now of saying, well, how do we, eat at the meal times that you normally eat at and all of those things that work for your life and lifestyle, but now apply this kind of calorie range to that so that we're eating the amount of calories that we need while getting the nutrition and the satisfaction and the, all the things that we get from food at the same time. And that's
what
the art of it. Yeah.
You know what? Food is fuel. I like that, but it's satisfaction. Oh yeah. My gosh. This is why every person who owns a dog, probably a cat too. My cat doesn't care, but we feel so bad in giving them those. We call them rocks. Okay, come get your rocks. That's why we want to feed them that special food that looks like human food. We want to give them something off the table because we think you wouldn't be satisfied with just some rocks. That is the sort of the whole crux of eating and food is satisfaction, family or friends or whatever TV show you like to watch while you eat, whatever. It's such a big thing. It's not just the nutrition. And I'm going to tell you another one of my funny things. People have often asked me, what do you think about intermittent fasting? The one where you only eat between like 9 and 6. And I always say, that's what my mom used to call me when breakfast, lunch, and used to say, breakfast is at 9, lunch is at 12, dinner's at 6, and then the kitchen is closed. So we had intermittent fasting for a long time. It's just, and I think a big challenge we have now is food is always available to us.
Yes.
and they just tore down our salad drive-through, and it's going to be a treat bar now.
No.
Probably going to be delish, but it's just one of those things that you do have to be satisfied at the same time as getting your nutrition. Otherwise, we could just pour out those pellets and
right, yeah, I mean,
Soylent Green, right?
Yeah,
right.
We don't have human kibble for a reason, right?
Right.
Yeah. Well, so I think that's such an interesting point, right? We have the physiology is what it is. Like we said, we can measure it, but then it's mapping psychology onto that. And then to your other point, what's our environment like? Do I have, salad bars on every corner? No, I've got a McDonald's on every corner. I've got a Starbucks on every corner. I've got, the super, 3 supermarkets down the street that all have the end caps that have, the highest calorie, lowest nutrient food. It's like, what is the milieu that we're constantly surrounded by? Like, all of that impacts the actual food choices that we make. And I think it's sometimes a misunderstanding of that. It's, oh, well, if you just do it this way, then it'll work. It's like, okay, well, if you don't understand the person in front of you, right? Like, what's their health history, right? What's the variations on the theme of their of their physiology, and then like what's their environment like? What's their psychological state like, and how do those all interconnect that led them to where they are today, and how do we manipulate those to help them to get to a better state?
And do not forget the most important I think about a growing number of people is finances. If you can't, I'm not going to say that. But you don't have to go to a very expensive place to buy your groceries. You can find a very acceptable food most everywhere. You don't have to eat the highest calorie thing at the fast food, but you can get good food at a fast food place if that's where you need to go. You don't have to have, my husband, whenever those burgers come on, and he's like, and they have three patties and all onions and this, and he's like, what do you think about that? Well, looks pretty tasty. But I don't think I do enough work in the day. And I'm not to be able to eat one of those. But maybe the guy that's doing the roofing down the street today, he deserves 2 of those because it is hot and he is working hard. So, I don't think food should be judged either. Your choices are based on what you can do. And if we can teach you to throw in a banana every day or an apple, or if you can grab the little bag of carrots with the kids' meal, or you don't have to have this triple, you can have the single, and guess what? You'll be just as satisfied. And hey, water is free, so try that, or get a water bottle and it'll cost you. I mean, there's a lot of stuff we can do, but food should not be judged. Bad food, I always love it. I'll put up a bunch of stuff and I'll say, okay, what's the bad food? And I'll have an orange and maybe a candy bar and this, that, and the other. And they always go to the candy bar. And then I flip the orange over and it's completely rotted on the side. I said, this is the bad food. So, maybe you need a Snickers bar if he's getting angry, or
it happens.
or that treat place, I'm going to try it. But I can't try it every day.
Right. And that's exactly, I think, finding that balance and finding, just people's understanding, their baseline understanding of nutrition and of how calories work in our body, and that there's a yin and yang. Like if I eat more calories today, maybe I need to eat a little bit fewer later, and balance that out, and all of those things. There really is such an art to the science of it. Yeah. We can dial it in down to the nth calorie on the science side, but it's not going to last if we don't dial in the art side of things of like, how do I apply this to this human and their life and lifestyle and things. It's funny, yesterday, there's a brand new restaurant that opened up right by our house, like right as you turn up our street to go to our house. And so I had a car full of teenagers and we just done an activity. And so I stopped by to try this new restaurant and brought home a bag of beignets. And my wife, oh, they're delicious. Half of them were cinnamon sugar and the other half were the powdered sugar. And my wife's like, well, I wish I hadn't known that. She's like, these are delicious. I wish I hadn't known that. And it's like, it's not that that's bad to eat anytime, you know, is it healthy? No. But is it horrible? No. But if you now know calorie. That and you eat it all the time. Yeah.
It was calories. It had, maybe it was whole grain flour. You know, so I could make a case for it. It's the main thing, I think, is it's not a bad food.
Right.
Because we're not going to judge it as a bad food.
Right. I always, when people say like, have I been eating wrong my whole life? And I'm like, well, you're still alive. So apparently not. So like, it's not good or bad or right or wrong. It's more about how does that line up with how you want to feel, what you want to be able to perform like, how you want to, you know, all of those things. And so if it's not lining up and getting you the result you want, then we need to make some changes, but it's not good or bad or right or wrong. It's, does this line up with my goals and how I want to feel and how I want to interact with my environment? And if not, then yeah, we could make some changes that will optimize those things for you. For sure.
And, gosh, in my critical care, my clinical care, even in my outpatient setting, we do evaluate weight, but it's, you know, one of the parameters because I want to see if you gained weight, lost weight, what's going on, because that'll tell you something. But I've had several of my GI patients say, because we're working on a GI problem, and they'll say, but you didn't say anything about my weight. And I'll say, you know what? If that's something you want to work on, we can do that too. But let's work on your GI problems first. And I think the weight stigma is still out there. And I know you've seen it because you guys have probably worked with lots of athletes. I've worked with a few. There's no one weight for an athlete.
Right.
They're just amazing. Some of I remember a guy who, when I was measuring metabolic rate at UT Southwestern in my early years, he was an elite cyclist. He rode his bike from Dallas to DC and back. His metabolic rate was, his RMR was just, you know, usual. He was a little guy, so it was probably like 1,200 calories. That guy had to eat 5 or 6 or 7. He did have to eat that big number because he was riding and so efficient and all. So, you know, who would have thought? Somebody would have said, oh, he probably needs a couple of 1,000 calories. Oh, no. So pay no attention to weight unless the patient wants to. And then, you know, it's complex.
Totally. In our program, we would always say, we want weight or weight loss to be the natural result of doing all the things for your body that are going to fuel you to get the result that you want. So like weight loss happens naturally as we fuel our body correctly, for what our goals are, as we exercise in the right way for what our goals are, as we start to, you know, put those lifestyle pieces in place that line up with what our goals are, then weight will take care of itself. You know, other performance improvement areas kind of take care of themselves. If we focus more on the process and not the right or wrong or whatever, but maybe the steps that we need to take for the goal that we want. And all of a sudden those things start to fall in place.
I would always say, because for a time I had a nutrition and gym program called Utopia Food and Fitness. And we were open for 13 years. We had food that you would buy that was fresh food, good food. And that's why I used my review there a lot for people.
Nice.
And then they'd work out 20 minutes twice a week, and they loved getting stronger. So sometimes weight and changing that body composition, it's like, but wait, I thought I was supposed to lose all this weight. And then we do the body comp and they're like, well, I thought I was stronger. Yes, you are lifting so much, and you're doing so. Yeah, it's so complex. Yeah,
Big time.
it takes a team. It really does take a team of people to manage this. I love my personal trainer. I love my PTs. You know, it's a combination of. In GI, we use a lot of GI psychologists. And of course, then we have our doctors that work with us. And I mean, it's hard to think of who just can function in one little entity.
Yeah. The interdisciplinary team is very important for sure.
Well, I would love to hear more about like the GI side of things, right? It's just like, it's different from kind of our day to day, and it's considerations that kind of the typical person doesn't have. And so I'd love to hear, like, what do you do with them? What are some of the considerations that you're dealing with? And then, like, I'd love to also hear that psychology piece. Like, how does that play into everything else you're doing?
Yeah.
Well, I think probably GI has always been a part, and is probably always a part of what a dietitian does, because especially in nutrition support, where a person maybe cannot eat, so they receive a feeding tube that goes into their GI tract. So we're always looking for symptoms. Lunch or dinner discussions with our dietitian group is so fun. Diarrhea, constipation, gas, bloating. But everybody gets into it, I will say that. But, symptom management, even with nutrition support. So when I went to the outpatient side, I was dealing with patients who were receiving parenteral nutrition, which is IV nutrition, when your GI tract really doesn't work well at all. So you might have had a surgical procedure that changed your GI anatomy. One of those is short bowel syndrome, or you might have had Crohn's disease and had some resection, or you might have Crohn's or ulcerative colitis, which are inflammatory bowel disorders. And then there's another one that's around a lot. It's called irritable bowel syndrome, changing its name to disorders of gut-brain interaction, which I think is so nice, because irritable bowel syndrome, doesn't that sound like that's nothing? Your bowel is just irritable. One of my patients called me and said, the doctor told me to see you because he said I had a grumpy gut. I said, did he say irritable bowel?
Grumpy gut.
Yes, that's it. And I've loved that ever since. But
Grumpy guts.
This having diarrhea every day, having gas and bloating, such that guys and gals look like they're about to have a baby. Constipation, pain. This changes your quality of life. It really can affect your ability to work, to go out, to have fun. And then if you're afraid to eat because you're not sure what caused that, oh my goodness, it's a lot. So I love working with GI patients because there's a lot that we can do, and they're motivated. So sometimes when you see somebody for weight management, they want you to tell them what to do, and then if you would go ahead and do it. Not them, you. How come this diet didn't work? Well, I think because you went to that treat shot there. treat shop on opening day. But the GI patients are very motivated because they're like, what can you do to help me? That's why they get into a little trouble with some of these fringe things, because they sound too good to be true. But that has been just such a joy to see. The field is expanding in GI nutrition. Now, doctors, gastroenterologists are referring to dietitians who have expertise in this field. Patients are telling other patients, I feel better, and it's based on what I eat. So celiac disease is kind of a no-brainer. We understand you have celiac disease. We cut out gluten. Great. But IBS, irritable bowel syndrome, which is now really recognized as a disorder of gut-brain interaction, which causes these symptoms. We've found some diet changes, in particular the low FODMAP diet managed by a qualified registered dietitian has about 70% effectiveness. Most meds have somewhere between 40 to 50% effectiveness. So changing the diet, and I do have data on that, you'll be glad to know. And so changing the diet is really important. Patients with inflammatory bowel disease, Crohn's disease, we can help change the trajectory of that diagnosis by working with the medications they're getting and helping them with their diet. Gastroparesis, when the GI tract is okay, but the stomach isn't emptying. Well, we can define or design a diet that will hopefully pass through the stomach. But if not, we have alternatives. I have a number of patients who really depend on IV nutrition, home parenteral nutrition, but they still want to eat, and they might not get nutrition from it, but we don't want to cause any symptoms from what they might eat, so we can determine what might help them that way as well. So it's kind of it's just so multifactorial working in GI. I never know what the next person is going to present. I never know what age. They might be a 16-year-old girl. It might be an 85-year-old guy. One of my favorite guys was from Lubbock, Texas, which is West Texas, where I went to college. And we did everything via Zoom, and he had IBS. And we worked through the diet. The low FODMAP diet has a 4-week elimination period, and then you reintroduce and determine what your optimal diet is. Because we don't want you to limit things forever. We just want you to limit those things that might be a problem. And so he figured it out, and he said, this is the greatest thing. If I follow what I know I can tolerate, I feel great all the time. Every once in a while, I'll eat something and I'll think, wonder what that was. But I get better. And then sometimes I go to the barbecue joint and I get everything I want and I know to go home. and that should be, to me, his description is great. Now, you can't do that if you're a celiac patient or a patient with celiac disease. So you can't eat gluten and go, oh, well, because it really does damage the villi. But, there's options. There's gluten-free beer, for heaven's sakes. One of my guys said, I just can't believe I had to give up beer. We'll find some. And we did.
Yeah.
Well, somebody's created something for you.
That is so right.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I love this, that it's these huge wins. And this isn't just like, we did this cool scientific thing. It was like, no, we actually had an outcome that mattered for this patient and their direct quality of life. And what I love is that you're taking, this is the scientific background. This is about what I know about physiology. And then again, I'm applying it to this N of 1. Here's the patient in front of me. Here's their needs. Here's their preferences. Here's their, likes and dislikes and everything. And then we can try different things, right? We have a suite of tools available. It's not just a hammer, right? We've got all of these things available that can help them. And the reason I bring that up is to what you said before, is it's like when people are highly motivated to solve a problem, things that sound too good to be true can be very enticing. And so they get captured by fringe things that don't work and that can often make the problem worse. And so I think the thing to understand is it's not just that like, oh, science didn't work. I'm still dealing with this. It's like, okay, this particular tool in that particular dosage may not have worked for you. Let's look at the other suite of tools that we have available and apply that to you. And we can bring in some medications if needed, right? We can do some nutritional adjustments. We can bring in the psychologist to see if that's part of the equation to help you deal with these symptoms and get back your quality of life. And when we do it in that systematic way, then it doesn't have to be like, well, I think this thing works, or, well, I feel like when I do this, it changes. It's like, no, when I eat these foods, I know that it causes this problem. When I eat in this pattern, when I do these things, I can have this direct, kind of causative relationship that I can draw. And then that helps me to actually know, what works and what doesn't work, and then help me vet future things. It's like, oh, well, no, that's definitely not going to work because that's not even how the body works, right? That's not even physiological.
No.
And so I love you going through this process with patients. And it's so cool. I can tell you're like, oh, I never know who I'm going to get, but it's this really fun puzzle piece. There is this fun puzzle that I get to solve with them that has direct impacts on their quality of life. So I think that's so cool.
Well, and you said something about GI psychology, and it's so interesting because I had a patient, we went through everything and she was great. And she's like, I'm going to be able to go back to my luncheons. I love these luncheons that I go to, and I didn't want to have to like not eat and then she calls me and says, it happened. And I said, we need to set you up with a GI psychologist because her gut is well, but her brain said, you're in a situation where in the past you've had GI issues. So let's have some. And so it could have been, the person who is like this tough guy or gal, and then you say, can you say a few words? And they faint. Mm-hmm. They're like, no, I cannot. So it's that same kind of, if she could talk to herself and tell herself, wait, I fixed this. Why am I getting nervous? And so she did. And those are some of my favorites too, where they tell me, guess what I did? And it's like, yay, I rode on a bus for 6 hours and I only went to the bathroom when they stopped. Yes. So, I mean,
huge wins.
Well, it's a lot.
Yeah. Well, I think this idea of kind of describing that way of this gut brain disorder actually seems to be helpful in so many ways, as it's like, it brings it into like, okay, like this is not just something that's in your head. This is a real problem that's occurring. How to deal with this? It reminds me of, in school, we were talking about conversion disorder, and the person mentioned that there was an individual who had been in a wheelchair, and she got out of the wheelchair, was starting to walk again, and then decided, oh, I don't need the wheelchair anymore, so gave it to Goodwill or threw it away or something. It was like a couple months later, and her friend who she'd borrowed the wheelchair gave her a call and said, oh, could I get that wheelchair back? I need it for this. And instantly she couldn't walk again. And so like, it's just, this real immediate impact in her life, influenced by whatever was going on in that interaction between her brain and the rest of her body. And so it was a very real phenomenon that was occurring. And so I think, having this, lumping things into that umbrella of gut brain disorders hopefully can destigmatize some of the things that people feel around these things. Because I think that's hard. People are like, oh, well, nothing's wrong with your body, just figure it out, versus like, okay, well, there's something in that interaction between those systems that's going on. How can we, work with that multidisciplinary team to figure out what might be going on in this particular individual and help them to deal with the symptoms that they're experiencing and get better.
There's an online app that I use with my IBS patients and really everybody. It's called Nerva, Nerva, and they just got approval to be covered by Medicare.
Whoa.
I know. I'm not covered by Medicare, but they are. So great.
Like, how did you do
But
it?
it's a really nice program. But who most people say, I'm so nervous, and they'll rub their stomach or whatever. It's the gut brain. Nobody goes, I'm so nervous. My head hurts. No, that's not what's hurting. It's, yeah. So, and to let people know that's okay and that's normal, and yes, you have to work on it, even if you think that psychology is just for crazy people. It's not. It's a really nice way of learning how to cope with a lot of things. So, my mom used to always say, someday they'll know that people should see their dietitian, their psychologist, and I forgot who else. Maybe physical therapy. I'll use that. How about that?
We'll take it. We'll take it.
But because, we run to the doctor and it's like, oh, you need this. Here's your shot and your medicine.
Yeah.
Which can be great.
I
love it.
Yeah, it can be. But I agree with you that if we can affect the lifestyle aspect of something, we'll likely make a bigger change than just a medication that covers it.
Yes.
Sometimes we still need the medication, but if we can address the lifestyle factors, it's an even bigger change, or it makes a bigger impact in our life and lifestyle.
Right. Exactly.
Well, it reminds me of, there's data. It goes back to this, like, how do we use multiple tools in the toolkit? There's really good data on mood disorders and this kind of, 3-point approach of, like, can we do medications that work? Can we use exercise as a modality? Can we use cognitive behavioral therapy or things like that? And doing that multimodal approach can often help people to deal with those symptoms. What you mentioned yourself, right? Through diet alone, we can often get like 70-80% of a change, right? Can resolve that. And then how can we bring in those other tools to get them the rest of the way?
Yeah.
That's right.
So I love that.
That is right. Exactly. It's really been fun. I think there's just been a huge improvement of everything, including and destigmatizing some things as well. So, I think understanding the multimodal approach is really improving everything.
Yeah.
So this is kind of a shift in gears, but I know, like, as part of the work that you've done, you've actually worked on some of the textbooks that dietitians use in school. This is just kind of like from a personal interest side of things. What's that process like? Like, what goes into creating that? Like, I'd be interested to know.
I have worked on a couple of textbooks, and those are great, but I've done some other things of books that I was interested in. I did a book on research that I was quite interested in. And so what you do is you just come up with an idea and say, we thought there needed to be more research in nutrition, so we wrote a book on research in nutrition, and it's old now, and I still see it on the being sold. I'm like, good, that is great. But I think it's an idea. I did a book on home nutrition support because there wasn't anything. So so what you do is in an academic or clinical type book, you typically are an editor and you get people to write chapters based on their expertise. So that's what I did with this home nutrition support book that I did with a colleague. And in fact, we're just starting on the second edition. And then I was very interested in I didn't think there was anything for outpatient GI nutrition. So I did a outpatient GI and home nutrition support book, and it turned out to be great. So I've done the second edition of that. And so these are books that have chapters that people are interested in. there's a chapter in the latest edition of this outpatient nutrition and outpatient GI nutrition book that I finished on everything from liver transplant to food sensitivity to celiac disease to irritable bowel syndrome to home nutrition support to nutrition assessment, just kind of a wide variety. And I tried to find the experts that I could find. Now, it would be much better if I wrote a book called Secrets to Having No More GI Issues. And sold that on a different platform. But so these books are really a labor of love because they're academic, they're great. My daughter's mother-in-law bought one right away, and I was like, "You do not have to do that." She said, "I want your book." Thank you, Arlene.
Oh,
yeah, she did it. This is never going to be the way that I'm going to sit back and make the cash, because it's not for that. It's to get the information out in a place where you can find it, and it's all combined, and you can go and say, "Oh, I need to find this doctor because he knows about whatever celiac disease. So I'm going to call Dr. McClave and see if I can get an appointment with him," or something like that. So that's what the books have been. I really love them. At midnight, going through the 14th edit and waiting for this person to send me their paper, and I'm thinking, "Come on, just do it, or tell me you're not going to." That's not nearly as much fun as seeing the book. So
I think you could have a New York Times bestseller, though, if you titled the book Grumpy Guts.
I think so too. I gotta find that guy, right? He was so funny. Yes. And his GI doc and I were thinking about writing a book together. And
there you go.
We never did, but we should have done it. We should have.
Could have done it. Well, so I think what you said in talking about compiling those books was so important. And this, I think, some of the nuance that's often missed in social media, because you have people that are talking about, nutrition or health and fitness, and they position themselves as an expert in everything, right? I'm an expert in nutrition and dietetics. I'm an expert in exercise. I'm an expert in physiology. I'm an expert in medication, right? All of these things.
Yeah.
It's like, well, wait. Like people that do, develop an expertise is typically in a very narrow domain. They know a lot about a little,
Right.
And so being able to bring together multiple experts is just, I think, such a valuable process of like, okay, like what is this person's specific expertise and how does it fit in with this person's specific expertise? And how does that give us an idea of kind of what's the consensus of all of this expertise and how can I apply this in this situation, And I think that nuance is often lost in kind of the world of fast consumable information, and in the world of social media is we miss the expertise and some of the things that does. And it really helps us to say like, oh, well, this is the person that I need to listen to on this. I need to dive more into this, right? Let me go find this physician, or let me go find this primary research and get more acquainted with their information so that I can get a better view of what's actually legitimate and what's not legitimate.
Yeah.
If somebody says, "Oh, I'm an expert in that," I'm an expert in that too. Why, absolutely, I'm an expert in that. That's when you need to run.
Right.
Right. Because it's like, the only people I know that have to be semi-experts, and they say they aren't at all, is like the emergency room doctors, because they've got to be able to make quick decisions about everything, but they don't they know when to refer. So, and they have to kind of know everything. They're in our group, or the PCPs, I guess, but they also refer. So None of them. So that's actually quite a good, if somebody says, well, I'm an expert in that. I always say I have a great interest in it. So I do a lot of research in that area. But I mean, I might be an expert today and tomorrow somebody does something else and I'm like, I missed that data.
Yeah.
No way.
I love what Einstein said. I believe it was Einstein that said, basically, I'm intelligent because I know how much I don't know.
Right.
I know more of what I don't know than you know of what you think you know, like that type of a concept. And I do think that's true, that the more you really dive into a subject, the more you understand how little we actually know about that subject. And that's what really makes you the expert, is knowing what we do know versus what we don't know.
Right.
I think our patients too and our clients appreciate it when we say, I don't know. Oh, that's so interesting. I don't know. I just had a patient send me some data yesterday and asked me a question. I was like, I don't know.
Yeah.
You need to ask somebody else. It's okay to not know. We don't know everything.
Right.
You can make up an answer, but you could suppose. Nobody needs your suppose. They need you to go, I don't know, but go over here.
Yeah. Refer to somebody that is an expert, or let me do some research on that, or whatever. But I 100% agree. Let me refer you to the person that does know, though.
Yeah.
Well, I remember in school, my professors, right? They knew the limits of their knowledge, and I respected them, to your point, so much for that. I was like, oh, I'm so grateful for like what they do know, and that they're willing to not just make up an answer. There's actually well, not name names, but there was someone that was trying to get into teaching that would like guest lecture, and they would never, ever say, I don't know. Like, even when it was clear that they were just kind of BSing an answer. And I just, like, I didn't really trust what they were saying, because I'm like, I don't think you do know,
Yeah.
And so, yeah. Can you tell this is a soapbox for me?
No, yeah, it's okay. We can't know everything. I wish, but no. And then it's changing. As soon as you say, oh, this, then the answer is changing. So that's cool. That's what research and emerging evidence and all that stuff is about. So.
Well, and that's what allows you to publish second editions and third editions of your books.
And one of the things that I think right now is the most confusing is the microbiome that everybody knows about. There's a microbiome. I think there's the microbiome for your face, your hair. There's microbiome everything. And it is so important, but we just don't know what to do with it. We've even been able to identify lots of the microbiome. Like we can do some GI stuff and understand what's in the stool. But that's something that passed by that moment. You can't use that except for that moment. And 50% or so of the microbiome is in the intestinal lumen. But even so, you get some data. We don't know what to do with it yet. That's where we are. There's so many steps. First, you say, oh, there's a microbiome. We just didn't know what to call it before. Now we're analyzing it. The actionable part is still to come. And that's the problem, is people are actioning it without having really good data to see.
Yeah. That's exactly, we see that a lot with a lot of different industry. Peptides are becoming so popular right now and things. And it's still so Wild West of like, yes, we know these peptides have actions in the body. What we don't know is secondary and tertiary reactions to those actions. Like everything has a consequence. So anyway, that's something where.
Who knew that peptides or amino acids, which are protein, and gosh, have some today.
Yeah. That's exactly our body. That's the funniest part about all the peptides to me, is like our body makes all those things.
I know.
Those are all things that we make. And so, yeah.
And the way I work with this, it helps me. And there's just a few of us who work with patients who require parenteral nutrition for lifetime. So we have had to determine the right amount of amino acids to give them, the right amount of dextrose to give them, the right amount of fat. We've actually done a lot of good research, new data on intravenous lipids. We give them their vitamins. We have to do their vitamins, their minerals, their electrolytes. And so when I know that I have helped with my team, pharmacist, physician, nurse, we've developed this great formula. It's going in somebody's body, and they live 25, 35, 45, 50 years. And then somebody says, I don't know how you can survive without these peptides. I just think, well, again, we need good data. We've got some great data on other things. We don't have good data on this. So,
yeah, that's exactly.
Well, I think part of this is a misunderstanding of what science essentially is. And at its base, it's kind of a question of probabilities, right?
Right. That's a way to think about it, but it's true.
And so to that point, it's like, okay, we know what the microbiome is. We know, that doing this changes it, right? Whether that's a good, bad, or indifferent change, we don't know yet. We need more data. We don't yet understand how to calculate the probabilities of how these different things affect them and what they lead to. And so it's like, this may be interesting. That's a great hypothesis, right? Here's this peptide. Here's this thing about the microbiome. That's a great hypothesis. Let's go study that. Let's design a research study. Let's go study that. Let's find out what that looks like. And then let's replicate that. And then we'll know a little bit more. And then that leads to a new hypothesis and more questions, right? It's this, question. And well, that's interesting. Now I have this question. And I think just it's great to be exploring, this kind of, this unexplored part of human physiology, right? How does this interact, right? Or how do we bring in these peptides or things? How does that affect the body? So great that we can explore these questions and that we can find out more information. It's just like, okay, but just because we know about something doesn't mean that we know everything about it. And so there's more work to do to discover. There's more science to do. And when we have, to your point, a good set of data, then that's going to inform our decision-making process, right? Then that's going to inform patient care. And we can see how that bears out in real people over time, And so I think this is just like, again, soapbox. I just see the harm that misinformation does. Yeah. And this is very personal to me. My mom passed away from cancer a few years ago, but I watched her throughout her whole life, just, this information from, about fitness or health or things. And she just had so much anxiety about weight and about food and about health. And so much of it was driven by people who knew nothing about it, who weren't abreast of the research. And it had real quality of life impacts. And so for me, having good information based on good data is so crucial for not just the acute care situations, but for long-term health, longevity, quality of life.
Probably, actually, to your point, more so out there than once you get into a cancer center or a GI place. You've got some people around you, but the Wild West out there, it worries me. And I was thinking about what you said about probability, because I was thinking about a surgical procedure that one of my friends had. They never have a 0% probability that anything will go wrong. It never happens. 0%. There's always a percent, because we're human bodies. We don't know what's in there. And so even the least, it's like, well, there's a 2% chance of whatever, right? And so I hadn't thought about that in probability related that way, but yes, sometimes I think the low FODMAP diet is wonderful. I use it all the time for my patients. Doesn't always work. That's why there's other things. So, yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So I'd love to hear you brought in some talk about the microbiome. Just in all of your study and research and working with clients, like, are there what other kind of myths or misinformation is out there that you'd really like to, let me put a nail in that coffin?
I would like to speak to every physician that talks to a patient and they say, my stomach has been bothering me. I don't know what it is. Cut out dairy and gluten. Now, I'm going to do a test for you. What is dairy? You guys get to answer.
I mean, essentially milk-derived products is what most people would say is a dairy product, is something derived from milk. Yeah.
Exactly. So typically what they're trying to say is if they've been having some diarrhea or whatever, they're probably lactose intolerant. So by cutting out dairy, they've cut out cheese, which can be a great source of calcium and actually protein. So they're going to cut out, they didn't know, they'll cut out milk. Yes, good point. So milk is out. There's lactose-free milk. So instead of being more refined, just cut out dairy and gluten and see what happens. Did they sign, we need to meet again in 4 weeks to find out if that worked? So I find people afraid of dairy and gluten on pretty much every one of my visits. And understanding that there are, I don't know how many people have a whey allergy or casein allergy. Those are the proteins in milk that you might be allergic to, and some kiddos are, so they get something else. I don't know how many of those there are, but it's pretty small. So now, so instead of saying you might be lactose intolerant, so why don't you try having lactose-free milk, lactose-free cottage cheese, or try these little tablets for about a month, see if that helps, and then add it back. That's, I don't think, I know one person who does that, my all-time favorite gastroenterologist, but that's the one. And then gluten, which means they're going to cut out bread and grains, and while we might eat too much pasta, a lot of our breads and grains and pastas are enriched with B vitamins. So you have now cut a real big portion of B vitamins. So that's my soapbox. And so also, they probably also tell this person to cut gluten but eat more fiber. How exactly do you do that? So anyway,
straight cabbage.
And then
see how that
they
treats
see
you.
me.
Exactly. See how that treats you. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, exactly. Oh my gosh. So that would be it. It's dietitians are not always covered by insurance companies, but they're covered more and more now. There's options to find dietitians out there. So not all dietitians are created equally. So you do need to look maybe at their website. If there's some claims that seem a little bit out there, you might want to go to the next dietitian. But there are dietitians to be seen, and I'm GI. One of my best colleagues is diabetes. One of my other best colleagues is kidney disease. Pediatrics, all kinds of pediatrics. I also do home parenteral and enteral nutrition. I mean, you can find somebody for you. Somebody just asked me about a patient with ALS. There's dietitians who focus on ALS. So
that's really cool.
There's great dietitians in sports too. So you can find somebody.
Well, I think that's so important to mention that finding the right expert is so important. And the differentiation between a nutritionist and a dietitian. So you have to be really careful if the person you're working with is a nutritionist, because there are some that are a sports nutritionist that has a master's degree or a doctoral degree that really have done research in this or things like that. But for the most part, nutritionists are self-study or like got their degree on Groupon or their certification on Groupon or something,
Yeah.
And unregulated.
Unregulated is really the key.
That's the bottom line. Right. Mm-hmm.
Right. Whereas a registered dietitian is a licensed, registered healthcare professional that if they do things wrong, they can lose their license. And that's an important differentiator versus something that's a certification or a self-study declaration of being a nutritionist. We have to really be careful there. So there are some expert people who have gotten degrees in nutrition that maybe have some qualification, but really if you're talking about prescribing diets, a dietitian is the way to go because they are licensed and so they are held to a standard by a regulatory board. And I think that's just such an important thing. So really do some research on, is this really a registered dietitian that had to register with their state and they can have their license removed if they're going off willy-nilly? I think that's an important differentiator.
So our registration is a national exam. So we're registered by the Commission on Dietetic Registration, and then each state has licensure. Not all of them have licensure, but you must complete the entire undergraduate, master's, hours of internship to become a registered dietitian. So one thing we say here where I'm from is every registered dietitian is a nutritionist, but not every nutritionist is a registered dietitian. And
That's
honestly, if
exactly.
you eat, you're a nutritionist because you know how nutrition affects
love it.
you. So we have added, about 10 years ago, we added registered dietitian nutritionist, RDN, to our title to claim it. So they can't claim, they can use nutritionist, but they can't use registered dietitian nutritionist. I can only imagine, I haven't talked to my foremothers because it was mostly women back in those days. But why they decided we would be registered dietitians instead of registered nutritionists. And the only thing I can think of is there were already registered nurses. So how would you know who is an RN and who is an RN? That is that's my thought. I'm going to say
that makes sense.
But I appreciate you, and thank you for saying that. I'm going to say one more thing. There's a lot of certifications that you can get online. Oh my gosh, I can't believe all of them. But there's some that are from the Academy of Nutrition and Dietetics or from other well-known boards. So a new one we have that I just received is the certification. I'm a certified specialist in digestive health. So that's our new GI credential. It just came out this year. It's a difficult test that you take. You have to qualify by having hours in working in GI. You take this test and you have to pass it at a specific amount. Another one I have is certified nutrition support clinician, and that is through the National Board of Nutrition Support. I forgot the last number, the last letter. Nutrition support certification, I guess, NBNSC. And again, that's an exam. You have to take it every 5 years. I can't believe I'm taking it again. I don't want to. I mean, surely they should let me have it. I've done it 8 times, or 7 times, but last time, not doing it again. But I feel like it's important to me. It's more of an entry-level credential, but it's gotten more difficult over time. Again, has data behind it, they do qualifications for it, and then they test to make sure the test is useful for what it's for. on a regular basis. So those are some other things you can look at for diabetes educators. There's a certified diabetes educator, and then now there's 2 more initials added to it. I don't know what they are. Certification in renal nutrition, pediatric specialist, oncology specialist. So usually if that's your thing, you kind of want to get specialized in that. But if it's not from an organization, I mean, I could make one up too
Yeah.
and charge you for
Yeah,
it.
we could all create a certification.
You can do it,
right?
sell Grumpy Guts, and then in the back of the book, it'll be the certification page.
Exactly.
For
And
Yeah.
you're Grumpy Gut certified.
the GGC.
Yeah.
There you go.
Send in another $100 though.
Yeah, exactly.
Ooh.
I like it.
Well, I know we've kind of gone long on time. It's just been a fun conversation. It's always great to hear from experts in the field, and like how you got into it and what you've learned. And just, I love this because there's so many applications of how to use the technology that we have to make people's lives better, to get better data, to make better decisions.
Mm-hmm.
And there's people that are using it in top end elite sports. There's people that are using it in clinical care scenarios. There's people that are using it for just general health and fitness. There's just so many different applications, so many ways this can be used. And so it's just nice to hear another way that you've used this data to help make improvements in your patients' lives.
Yeah.
I recently started, I have a few friends who are on GLP-1, and I said, ooh, can you come over and let me measure your metabolic rate? Now I need to follow them up and see because wouldn't that be interesting to find out that, in fact, they lost weight and a lot, and their metabolic rate should decrease anyway because they are different weight. But what if it really decreases? I don't know. Have you seen that data yet?
Yeah, mostly anecdotal. I haven't seen a published research study. I can't talk about some of what we just about a study.
Send it over when you find it, because but
what anecdotally, yeah, we're seeing people on GLP-1s with very low resting metabolic rates, like 700-800 calorie resting metabolic rates.
That's no fun.
And not everybody. But those, especially if they're not heavy weightlifting, not managing protein intake, things like that, we're finding a lot of kind of muscle wasting and things. So it's not the drug itself; it's just the ultra low calorie diet. We saw very similar things.
Exactly.
Yeah. And so we saw similar things back with the HCG diet.
Yes. Oh gosh.
And I was testing people with just ultra low resting metabolic rates because they were on 500 calories a day of diet. And so their body just had to decide what it could and couldn't fuel. And so we see a lot of muscle wasting and bone density loss and other things. And with that comes a very low resting metabolic rate. So seeing 700 to 1,000 calories on somebody with a GLP-1 is usually why they've plateaued and why they're getting the test done, because they're frustrated. Like, why am I still not losing weight? And it's like, well, because at this point, we can't really create much of a calorie deficit for you at 700 calories. And so, we are seeing that somewhat. I haven't seen a ton of studies on that yet. But I know there are some in the work.
And the product, GLP-1, is great if you can get somebody to eat the diet that they need to eat. But the loss of appetite in people that have never lost their appetite before, they're like, yay, look at this. I'm not thinking about food anymore. In fact, I haven't thought about it for 3 days. Hey.
Which causes its own problems for sure. But I think that's, as we get that dose titrated correctly, and I think we're just learning so much.
Yeah.
As we're applying this to a more broad general audience, we're learning so much about how to titrate those dosages to the individual so that they're getting the right amount of hunger suppression without totally just losing all hunger. Because hunger is an important thing. We kind of need it.
Yeah. But I also think having that multidisciplinary team of experts is so helpful, because it's like, we have shown with this drug that people can get substantial weight loss. It's very effective, right? It's like really a kind of a wonder drug, if you will, as far as weight loss is concerned. But to your point, it's like, if I'm eating 1,700 calories that could be 1,700 calories of fresh fruits and vegetables, of high protein, lean cuts of meat, getting whole grains. That could also be whatever I can get at 7-Eleven. And so, like, not all diets are created equal. And so, like, while I can lose the weight, what else is happening metabolically? What's happening to my musculoskeletal system? Am I drawing on my reserves of muscle, and that's part of weight loss? And so I think it's really important to have a team that can help with those lifestyle aspects and of that. Like, okay, yes, you can eat fewer calories. Those calories still matter. The vitamins and minerals and other micronutrients still matter. So how do we bring these pieces in to not only help you lose this weight safely, but to make this sustainably, right? When you look at what the most effective diets are, it's what people could stick to for the longest period of time as a new behavior. And so it's that process of behavior change and understanding that and helping people through that. Like, that's so important that if we're just giving people the drug, we miss out on a huge way to help them over the long term.
And
I think that's what we're seeing.
What's happening, I think, is they're just getting the drug, but I know that's another story. Well,
hopefully that pendulum will swing back. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
I've appreciated being with you guys today, and I hope I didn't tell you my whole story so I can come back another time.
We would love to have you back. Yeah.
So, just real quick, if people want to find you or find more about you, how can they do that?
I have a website called digestivenutritiongroup.com, and there's lots of stuff on there. So there's there's a form that you can fill out to talk to me. So certainly that. There's some recorded programs on there too. So digestivenutritiongroup.com, all squished together, is my website.
Perfect. We'll drop that in the show notes for sure.
Fantastic. Well, as always, thank you everyone for joining us. If you want more content like this, remember to like, follow, and subscribe, and we'll catch you next time. Ready to take your metabolic testing to the next level? Visit KORR.com to learn more about purchasing our metabolic test equipment.